evening, everybody. Welcome to the March 10th Board of Education work session. Laura McCoy is absent this evening, ill, and I'll be filling in for her. Appreciate the patience as we went into closed session. We have already taken roll, so we will go right into public forum. We have several individuals that have requested to speak. The first person, Tanya Sioni, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, hopefully. When you step to the microphone, make sure that it's on. And then if you would give your name and your address, and then you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Last year, you guys couldn't hear me, so.
No, it's not on. Oh, it is?
Okay. So my name is Tanya Sioni, and my address is 2380 Ontario Road in Bellevue. So I am a 4th grade and 5th grade teacher at Catherine Johnson Academy. Last week, we were informed that you were being presented with options to consider related to the budget deficit, including the option to close or restructure Catherine Johnson Academy again. I stood before you in November of 2023 in a similar situation. When the decision was made, the board recognized Catherine Johnson Academy as an important modality and encouraged the district to grow the program to be a sustainable school. Shortly thereafter, groups of administrators toured our studios and observed our classes. The letter that was received last week was disheartening. Our enrollment was characterized as flat. In November of 2023, the letter that I have said our student enrollment was 42 students, and we are currently serving 95 students. Our enrollment has more than doubled in 16 months. It's important to note that because of the nature of our school, some students are only with us for short periods of time, and as of Friday, we had actually served 119 unique students this school year. Our enrollment has grown despite the fact that we are a relatively unknown school. When speaking with colleagues from other schools, few of them have heard of KJ or even know that our district has a virtual school. This is discouraging because these teachers know who is struggling in their environment, and they can identify students that could potentially benefit from an alternative program. Some families have become aware of us only after stating that they are homeschooling their students. These same families have expressed to us that they wish they had known about us sooner, that their students are doing better than expected, and they are delighted with the changes they are seeing in their students. We acknowledge Catherine Johnson is not the best for every student. We should not be thought of as a competitor to traditional schools, but instead as complementary to them, as an essential part of a system that works together to meet all children's needs. Closing Catherine Johnson Academy would eliminate the only non-traditional option available to all elementary students. I once again ask you to maintain Catherine Johnson as a K-8 virtual school program. Without seeing what we do, it is difficult to appreciate what makes us an essential alternative for students that need us. Without speaking with us, it would be difficult to know what could be done to restructure our program without losing its integrity. Come, visit our classes so you can appreciate the difference we're making. Come, talk to us so we can share our thoughts with you about possible ways to restructure Catherine Johnson Academy to be more cost-effective. While you are considering your options related to the budget deficit, I encourage you to acknowledge Catherine Johnson K-8's virtual program as an essential part of the Green Bay area public school system. Thank you for allowing me to address you this evening.
Thank you. Next, we have Emily Heil.
Good evening. My name is Emily Heil, 830 South Jefferson Street. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a proud member of the Green Bay Education Association and an employee of Green Bay Area Public Schools. I'm representing an accessible introduction to offer context and access for all. I am a white woman with curly brown hair and glasses wearing a blue Green Bay Education Association cardigan. I am joined by district music educator and Green Bay Education president, Brent Bergstrom. The Paraprofessional Mentoring Program pilot was started by GBEA for the school year of 23-24, funded by grant monies from the National Education Association. After a successful year at a few select schools, Green Bay Area Public Schools joined collaboratively for the current year with additional grant monies from the United Way. Our intention for this program and many of our union programs is to continue recruiting and retaining highly skilled and dedicated employees. I am here before you this evening to share an important win for our community. The National Education Association has awarded us a $300,000 grant paid over the next 3 years to continue building our paraprofessional mentoring program. The proud paraprofessionals of the GBEA, along with the support of our president, executive director, and the executive board, decided to search for funding to make positive changes and career development happen for our paraprofessional workforce. Very similar to shortages for educators and substitutes, we are facing a shortage of adequate paraprofessional staff and substitutes in this district. This directly affects our students, including some of our most vulnerable. It is the hope of the Green Bay Education Association that this program will continue for the next 3 years in partnership and alliance with Green Bay Area Public Schools. Having experienced and dedicated paraprofessional collaboration and insight will be paramount in the success of this program. We look forward to bringing you positive updates and paraprofessional career advancement news in the coming years. Thank you for your continued support and solidarity to the students and staff of this district.
Thank you. That's actually awesome. I appreciate that. All right, next, Steph Guzman. She's still here. Steph, you know if she's gone online? Yep. Okay, next, Ileana Herrera Flores. She was with Steph earlier. I'll do the same. And then the last person I have is Sarah Savage.
Hello. I'm Sarah Erdman Savage, and I think I'm supposed to say my address, 1489 Cedar Street, Green Bay, Wisconsin, 54302. I am a parent of a young lady who attends Katherine Johnson Academy. You may remember me from last year when I came to speak. I wanted to come out here today again and talk to you guys about Katherine Johnson Academy and what a difference it has made in my daughter's life. She struggled in traditional school. She was bullied, she was picked on, and she struggled to learn when she was in that environment and in that setting. And the flexibility and the higher amount of responsibility that children that are in the learning style, like the children that go to Katherine Johnson Academy, just really worked for her, as it works for a lot of kids that struggle in traditional school settings. That being said, I would really like to see Katherine Johnson stay open, to help kids that are in the same position that Dorothy was in. And I really want to see children like her across the board succeed. And I hope that you consider keeping it open, because this is a lifeline for kids that are like my daughter. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So we will move on. We're going to move to section 4 on updates. I'm going to invite David Johns. I think you have others that are coming up with you. to discuss strategic plan recommendations. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Board. Kenzie's going to pull up a document for us here in a moment. Okay. Thank you.
Can we confirm that everyone can read that? Can you make it a little bigger? Thank you.
Thank you. Board, what you're seeing on the screen is the document that was shared with you a month ago as we laid out the components of the strategic plan, the draft of the strategic plan, up to and including a draft of the 5-year goals that we would be pursuing through this plan. The intent this evening is to share with you, based on feedback you provided, some updates to this document, and then to transition into the board memo that outlines the request for your action a week from now when you meet again on the 17th. So in this document, again, it portrays the mission of our organization and the recommendation for our mission to stay as it is, with the understanding that the Portrait of a Graduate provides greater illumination of what the mission actually calls for. It begins to, the scene starts to pop with a little more vivid character when we talk about what does it look like when we're preparing our students to be college, career, and community ready. So the relationship with the vision and the mission we feel is even stronger here. And of course, that Portrait of a Graduate, as you know, was work that began last year and had a high level of community engagement and input. If you could scroll a little more. What I'd really like to focus on this evening with my at the table are some strategic actions. The board requested, understandably so last time, for some examples of if the strategic goals are as ambitious as we portray them, how would we expect to see the district start to shift and change in accordance with those goals? Yeah. Okay.
Time's up.
Okay.
Time's up.
I feel like you might be giving me one of those.
Time is up. Thank you very much.
Many people out there are wishing for that, trust me. The board asked for some examples of some actions, and understandably, the organization is going to need to grow and evolve in order to meet the goals that we set forward for your consideration. And so tonight, with Angie and Kale, I'd like to share some of those actions, what they mean in the moment, and then how they'll fit into a more deliberate and specific action plan and a cadence of accountability that we'll be engaging with the board on a regular basis around. So if you could scroll, please. Thank you very much. The teams that have been organizing the strategic plan and working with our partners have really chunked these into 3 different areas. And so the first column identifies the priority area. There's 4 of them. And then within those areas, they work to identify some practices to sustain. This journey into the next 5 years of our future as an organization doesn't mean we're starting from zero. It means that we have to look very carefully at the things that we have some traction And what are some of those things that I guess I would say, you know, we're onto it, and we want to make sure that before very quickly adjusting or changing something, we really make sure those practices are intact. And so here for academic excellence, we talk about the important work that's already taken place in partnership with our phenomenal teachers to deliver a high quality curriculum, to make use of board approved high quality instructional materials, and the importance of authentic and genuine observation and feedback that takes place in and out of classrooms all day long. The teams also identified practices to expand or enhance. You've heard it before when people often say that in organizations, something excellent is happening in pockets, and that's very true. And so our obligation is to find where those pockets are, confirm that they're getting the results, and then grow those practices so that it's no longer an in-pocket experience, but viable throughout the entire district. And so here you see some of those examples as well. And every once in a while, we need to start or renew some things. We need to take a look at where there are gaps, and we need to focus on things that we need to bring about. And here we see those practices, again, high level right now, that the teams are recognizing that we need to put into practice. You'll notice that the final one is italicized, and I'm going to turn this over to Angie to share a little bit more insight around the ways in which our operations system and finance system work fluidly throughout all of these domains and are going to be necessary in order to move this work forward.
Thanks, David. So in the italicized writing, we have invest in external program review partnership to inform decision-making regarding return on investments. So I picked this one as an example as to how finance is going to, be able to allocate resources to do some of these things like this, like reviewing somebody coming in externally, reviewing all of our programs from a perspective that we might not have because we're too close to the programs, or coming in and kind of auditing and just making sure that we're getting our return on investment. So almost like paying it up front so we can see, so we can save money, or we can put resources into those programs that are really working for our students, and maybe reduce some resources in some of the programming that maybe aren't getting the results that we want, and investing those funds into something that is really, really going to do well for our kids in the future. So that is just one example, and I chose that one. But again, like David said, finance and operations is going to kind of thread through all of these, and we will be working really closely with the teams that have come up with these strategic priorities, because we kind of are, I view our departments as running across and horizontally across all of these kind of pillars, because we are going to be the ones that are going to just help guide, make sure we have the resources, to allocate to these things that have become our priorities. So one of those examples is what I just talked about.
Thanks, Angie. And while external program review is indicated there under academic excellence, it's not limited to just that area. It would be a really important part of a culture shift and a commitment that we would make to ensure that everything we're doing is in alignment to the broad-based student outcomes that we've identified in the plan. Thriving student body. Here we see again some actions to sustain, to expand and enhance, and to start and renew. And with these, I'll turn it over to Cale to speak a bit more on the operational implications for this goal area.
Thank you. Similar to what Angie had mentioned, there's an obvious financial piece to most of the decisions or the actions that will be needed to execute this plan. What we kind of highlight here is our student attendance, and I also mention the co-curricular participation. That can be achieved a number of ways, many of which we're trying to reduce barriers and things like that. And to do that, we're looking for efficiencies and things like transportation, how we leverage facilities, how we leverage other resources, not just dollars. So that's FTE, that's facilities, and beyond. So as we get into the action steps of that, how we become more efficient and how we leverage our existing resources, and at the same time, how do we prioritize our resources into the strategic plan? without maybe overextending some of those. So it becomes an efficiency conversation with existing resources, in particular at things like transportation for co-curriculars.
This connects with some comments that came from the board earlier about recognizing that we have some opportunities to take down some barriers through this work, and that our students really ought to have the benefit of whatever's happening across the district based on their interest, regardless of whether we can meet that in their individual school or somewhere else. And the role for transportation, especially in that, is going to be critical. Our next area is thriving workforce. These are the goals that are associated with employee retention, employees pursuing their passion and interest through professional learning, employees engaging safely in the workplace and feeling supported in the work that they do. And so we'll highlight again here an operations intersection.
So just allocating resources to expand staff training and de-escalation strategies. So this would include all of our support staff. So not only, the one-to-one paras or those people in the classroom, but also really important to have our bus drivers, to have our food service, those people who are in the lunchroom to de-escalate, right? Not just the people, not just our support staff who are with the students. So this is really important. And budget wise, right? We talk about workers' comp, right? And the increase of workers' comp expenditures. So in the long run, investing in this upfront, doing the proper training for all of our support staff, right, is going to result in savings on the workers' comp and obviously keeping our staff and our students safe as well. So this is just another example as to how, right, investing upfront, allocating those resources is going to help also in the long run and with our budget in the future.
Thanks, Angie. And our fourth proposed strategic priority is family and community engagement. And here again, Kale will speak to some connections with one of these high leverage actions.
This strategy would be similar to what we've spoken on the previous three, but what I highlighted here was our family engagement components for each of the school's success plans. So as operations and finance work with each individual school, building a plan that can best leverage not only existing resources, facility, communication tools, things like that, but seeing maybe where some efficiencies and shortfalls are, where we can get that, get communication out to our community and families more efficiently, and then also finding additional opportunities with some of our existing resources. So that was where we kind of identified some operation input with these with these strategic plan for future action steps.
To me, this invites some exciting ways to think about how our facilities are used, when they're used, and the various ways that they can become neighborhood and community hubs in the service of this family engagement, community engagement component. So at your request, and again, important work for the teams to do, they're sharing with you here some high-level actions. This is not what I would call an action plan. This doesn't have the specificity of who's going to do what by when and what is it in the service of. All of these would be considered among year one efforts that would take place, but they would be built into a much tighter timeline. And that would become the grounding of the engagements that we would have with the board year over year, identifying ahead when we would check in on certain milestones for each of these areas and when you would hear essentially the fruits of these labors that you see listed.
Is that the end of the presentation? I just want to make sure that you don't have anything else to say before I open it up for questions and discussion.
Happy to equate as well as reference to anything in the memo which speaks directly to the items for board action.
All right, Brian?
Thank you. I really appreciate the expanded staff trainings and de-escalation strategies. And I think we had a speaker that talked earlier about the National Education Association, the Green Bay Education Association partnering with us. I think this is a prime opportunity of continuing that partnership, because I do see an issue at times where have we taught our supervisors how to actively supervise? And luncheon monitors, how to engage with students and, through the classroom and through those settings where we see a lot of situations come up. So I'm hoping that we can continue to partner with different groups on that, especially through different programs that are offered with this. And the de-escalation strategies, I think, takes a big step towards just solving the other problems in there. So thank you. I hope we can continue partnerships with that.
Anyone else? So I do have a question. I appreciate the work, and I recognize that this process has gone from portrait of graduate work through and identifying out the domains and coming up with these strategic priorities. And then it feels like what happened next was you kind of sat down and said, okay, we're in the middle of a year, right? And let's kind of do this stop, start, continue exercise to make sure that we can, start collecting and identifying the work that needs to be done in service of these 4 strategic priorities. You mentioned an action plan, and that will be the instrument that I think we would use to kind of monitor the progress against a timeline and at intervals. Can you speak to when you expect to have that in place and what that looks like as you come back? Because I recognize, I think, what we're going to vote on in a week, right? And that is, are these the right KPIs? Are these the right strategic priorities? Is this the right mission vision statement? I think I understand that now. Looking for, what comes next and how that will be presented to the board.
Thank you for that question. Yeah, that is the work that'll take place over the spring months, so that as we go into month 1 of the new strategic plan, which is July, the board would not only see a detailed map of actions and a method to monitor those actions internally, but also a back mapping of the 5-year goals to benchmark years corresponding to each goal. In other words, and the teams are already at work on this, certain goals, we would have an annual, let's say, state data point that could be our interval. So clearly we would have a 5-year benchmarked goal for that. Others might not have annual, but we definitely have to have checkpoints along the way, so that when you ask the question, how are we doing toward our attendance goal? We can't say, well, wait 5 years and you'll find out. So we need those interim measures identified. And then of course we would need the actions that we're undertaking to go with it. So over the next 3 months, the teams will be working on that, guided off of the approval that you grant next week to those 5-year goals, and creating that much more specific action plan. Now, I will say that most successful strategic plans have the more specific actions on the front end, and it's the continuous improvement cycle where you use that interim data to inform kind of a brand new, what are we going to continue doing? What are we going to enhance? And then with embedded program review, what are the things that we're going to stop? So long answer to your question, but over the next few months, that's what you would see. And so that you would know as we go into July, we are completely in alignment with a cadence of accountability, what the board will see over the next year when, and a preview of the dashboard that we'd like to use to anchor those conversations.
Thank you. Other questions? Ku.
Thank you, James. David, I think you guys are this is fantastic. First of all, I love the idea and the layout of this plan, and obviously there might be some weak components in here as well that I think we have to be aware of, and I think you guys probably is aware of some of these things. I mean, as a district, as we're approaching 2026, budget constraints is one of them, right? That plays into the idea of, inflation, enrollment, limited state funding. All of these things kind of play into how we're going to execute this strategic planning process. And I know that Angie and Kel's right there explaining to us the idea that it takes money to actually execute this. And this is also from the people at home that I think that for us to be aware that in anything we do, that it takes the support of the community to back behind this. But my recommendation is that I think it's wonderful. Just that the plans. I know you mentioned the timeline, and you're going to be more specific. But I would love to see us have more focus in the idea that hey, we're going to improve math by this percentage by this time. We're going to improve reading by this percentage by this time, because I think that's more realistic, that's more measurable, and we could actually hold ourselves accountable to some of these goals that we set. And I think that will be something that I intend to see or would like to see in the plan as we move forward. Thanks.
Do you want to speak to that or?
Just with appreciation. Yes, I agree. I agree.
I do think that the attached memo does lay out KPIs more in line with what you're expecting around proficiency in reading, proficiency in math, and improvements there as well. Rick.
Just so everyone has the context of where a strategic plan falls in this, the whole thing about planning and then executing the plan, how we're looking at this is the strategic plan lays out the umbrella, if you will, the context by which we intend to operate for the next 5 years. Underneath that umbrella would then be an operating plan, which goes into the level of specificity that we're talking about, that has a scorecard that lays out it's a shorter timeline, and mostly they do it in 1 year increments. This year, this is the part of the strategic plan we intend to execute. Here are the metrics that matter, the scorecard that you're talking about, certainly there. There is also a conversation that should be happening, and that's contingency planning, the what ifs that could happen that could derail this plan. I mean, this is the sunny day scenario where everything is going to go according to plan, but we all know that no plan survives the first contact with reality. So we've got to have those contingency plans and those things that if this happens, here are the actions that each one of these quadrants are going to do. And we have to do that level of work as well. From that comes organizational structure of looking at, are we currently configured appropriately to do the work that we say we're going to do? That's an internal look at everything that we do in the district. The departments, are we structured appropriately? Is there redundancy or overlap in work activity between certain elements? Are the schools, the types of schools, the IB school, are those concepts still valid within the context of the strategic plan? Those are things that we need to get after and make sure that they are if it's a yes or no question, and then B, if it is a yes, then are they doing what it is that they are chartered to do? So and I just wanted to put all this out. I know you guys know this, but I want to make sure that everybody understands that this is a continuum, and it cascades from that strategic plan down to these specific actions. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, David.
Thanks,
We
everybody.
will, I
Thanks.
think, have Kale just remain at the table and do 2022 and 24 referendum updates, please.
So as promised, with the increased workload here, we did put together a short slide deck. I'll continue to update this and plan to bring this to the board at each work session. Thank you. And if there's any details or anything like that the board would like to see, please feel free to reach out. But I'll try to keep this brief overview and then dive in with any questions that the board has. The first would be our 2022 referendum projects that are still in design. It's going to be a very busy couple months. I mentioned last time that these will be going out to bid between March, actually now and the end of April. And you can see the projects here. We have a addition at our distribution center. We have HVAC upgrades, part of which has already been awarded at Howe and Sullivan. And then Franklin and Southwest Gym updates, part of which has already been awarded as well. These are 22 referendum construction projects that these have been awarded or are currently in construction. So you can see the construction phase list is tapering off from the projects we closed out in January. Pre-construction phase, that's a number of things, but essentially those have been awarded to contractors and will begin this spring. So we have a HVAC upgrade at Lombardi and multiple roofs here. I won't go through the list. The construction phase, as we talked about last time, the West Stadium, that will re-engage in spring to complete the grandstand construction. And the city continues to install the speed safety signs, which is funded partially through the 22 referendum.
Andrew.
So do we have an estimated date for the West Stadium yet?
We're engaging with our contractors again who construct the grandstand. And then we're also engaging with the contractor from the third party cell tower company. And those construction meetings start this Friday. So I should have a better anticipated schedule for the board next update. That with the frost and the weather, as you can see, that's very conducive to what we're doing. That's kind of our big restriction for the cell tower gear move. And then the footings for our grandstand. So that is playing well into our schedule. So I would anticipate an earlier start, but I'll have more details on the exact start date later this week. And then this brings us to our 24 referendum. So what you see here is like I spoke about last work session, and also probably what we've seen in previous updates. This is just a high level update for our overall schedule. Phase 1, we have Chapel Elementary, Doty Elementary, the new West Side Elementary, and Washington Middle School. So that's all work that you're going to see starting this spring and summer and continuing for the foreseeable future. We are still working on the phasing of the other plan of the other projects in the 24 referendum. I would anticipate bringing that update to the board in the next few updates. So exciting time. This will be the first time I'm presenting actual awards for the 24 referendum. The first project that went out to bid was Washington Middle School. I have a brief scope of work for you as a reminder. That's a secure entrance office update and a restroom renovation for Washington Middle School. Here you'll see the bid results. And you can see the total base bid award for our contractor through Nexus, our construction manager on all of these projects. And then I'll include some bid notes here as well. As you can see, we had a great bidder turnout for this. We had 19 qualified bids, and we did award each package to the lowest qualified bidder. And then that total you see is the sum of all those bid packages. The second piece we have is our second awarded contract for the new elementary school. This is specific to our geothermal well drilling. So this is only the piping and the actual drilling of the geothermal wells. We received 2 qualifying bids. This is a very niche type of construction, very difficult schedule-wise. Luckily, we received 2 bids, one of which can actually not only meet our schedule, but exceed in a shorter time frame. So that was very promising to see. We did, luckily in this case too, award to the lowest qualified bidder on that as well. So we got the more condensed schedule and the lowest qualified bidder with that process. And that's similar to how you'll see these updates come with awarded projects. And then as we begin to get into the construction progress, Nexus will also be presenting construction progress throughout, and will join us from time to time to give you construction updates from actual on-site progress.
Any questions from the board? None? Thank you, Cal. So the next item under updates is a legal requirement to read the report of canvassers. I think Brian has that.
I do. And Kinsey, I just want to make sure I'm reading all three of these, or just the two certifications, I assume. All right. All right. Certification of the Board of Canvassers. We, the undersigned, certify that we are members of the Board of Canvassers for the Green Bay Area Public Schools. We certify that the attached tabular statement of votes cast and summary statement of the Board of Canvassers canvassed and prepared by us are correct and true as compiled from the original returns made to Celestine Jeffries clerk. We further determine and certify that the spring primary election received the following results on February 18th, 2025. Elliot Christensen, 2,301 votes. Alex Minnow, 2,610 votes. Katie Gentry, 2,830 votes. Ethan Rouse, 1,352 votes. Rick Crossan, 4,376 votes. James Lyerly, 4,580 votes. And Jeanette Cannell, 4,079 votes. And it is undersigned by Celestine Jeffries and two people who I can't read their full signature. And the second one, certification of the Board of Canvassers. We, the undersigned, certify that we are the members of the Board of Canvassers for the City of Green Bay. We certify that the attached tabular statement of votes cast and summary statement of the Board of Canvassers canvassed and prepared by us are correct and true as compiled from the original returns made to Celestine Jeffries clerk. We further determine and certify that the following persons received the greatest and next to greatest for primary only number of votes for the respective offices for which each was a candidate on February 18th, 2025. All of these are offices of the Green Bay Area Public Schools trustee. And in the order of votes received, James Lyerly, Rick Crossan, Jeanette Cannell, Katie Gentry, Alex Minnow, Elliot Christensen, and Ethan Rouse. And the last page says see attachment.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, I'm going to pass the chair back over to Brian and he'll lead us through the education section.
All right. We are going to be talking about the Elementary English Language Arts, Leonardo da Vinci School for Gifted Learners Resource Adoption. Start.
Board, although these are all listed as individual items, I'd like to invite representatives from each of the curriculum adoptions coming before you to the table. I'm going to step away, but then they'll present in the order that's listed in the agenda.
And if we could start on this side, and if you just want to introduce yourselves from this side.
Good afternoon. I'm Linda Teskey, the Director of Literacy.
Hi, I'm Jen Schneider. I'm the ELA Curriculum Coordinator.
Hi, I'm Vicki Leisking, Principal of Leonardo da Vinci School for Gifted Learners.
Eric Kahn, Director of Curricular Pathways.
Angela Combe, Director of Curriculum.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity. The English Language Arts ELA recommendation for Leonardo da Vinci School for Gifted Learners is Wit and Wisdom by Great Minds. This resource is requested to ensure Leonardo da Vinci continues teaching a rigorous program benefiting all of our Da Vinci students. Wit and Wisdom allows for differentiation and acceleration for advanced students in all aspects of language arts: reading, writing, speaking, listening, and language. The work to find this resource started over a year and a half ago by surveying all Da Vinci staff, asking what they were looking for in their next resource. Several resources were explored, discussed, and researched over time. Curriculum representatives were invited to Da Vinci to present their offerings. After further listening sessions and discussion with Da Vinci stakeholders, we have concluded that Wit and Wisdom meets the original criteria Leonardo da Vinci School for Gifted Learners was looking for in a resource. Some key highlights for this recommendation are all stakeholders, Da Vinci families, advocate for adopting the most rigorous program for our gifted learners. And Wit and Wisdom is that. The lessons and activities feature skills with high depth of knowledge and rigor. Kagan's strategies are featured in the lessons in Wit and Wisdom, and they align with the Leonardo da Vinci School Success Plan. Kagan's strategies are implemented regularly to enhance student participation and engagement. These allow students to be collaborative through activities such as Think, Pair, Share, and Think, Puzzle, Explore, just to name a few that are featured within the lessons of Wit and Wisdom. Wit and Wisdom offers a comprehensive scope and sequence that is aligned with Wisconsin state standards and Act 20 expectations. Da Vinci teachers will use this resource to differentiate, moving students from where they are to their next level of learning. Wit and Wisdom pairs well with UFly, which is the University of Florida Learning Institute, for K-3 alignment to the science of reading. This is a natural fit for Leonardo da Vinci School for Gifted Learners, as we purchased UFly teachers' manuals at the start of this school year. UFly came highly recommended to us. We decided this year's students should be guaranteed the same alignment to the science of reading. Our thought was, why wait? Implementing UFly this year provided an opportunity to trial the effectiveness of this resource. Leonardo da Vinci teachers reported having more growth in early literacy than ever before, unanimously leading K-3 teachers to strongly advocate for maintaining UFly as our foundational resource, along with adopting Wit and Wisdom. Professional development is included in this proposal for ongoing support and success, inclusive of summer professional development and sessions for support into the 2025-26 school year. Wit and Wisdom paired with UFly meets expectations on ed reports, meets Wisconsin state standards, and aligns with Act 20 to meet the science of reading requirements. Together, Wit and Wisdom and UFly meet all criteria Leonardo da Vinci was seeking when this process originally began. Thank you for your continued support on behalf of Leonardo da Vinci School for Gifted Learners, where we provide the appropriate level of challenge for academically gifted students in a rigorous, student-centered, and diverse learning environment that prepares our students to be world leaders.
All right, thank you. Does anyone have any questions on that part? Okay, moving on.
Next, we have the curriculum and resources for our middle school and high school health courses. The proposed curriculum updates for both the middle and high school health courses reflect the collaborative work of our middle school and high school health teachers from across the district. This update would align our courses to the 2024 Shape America National Health Standards. The current Wisconsin standards were last updated in 2011. The curriculum would place an emphasis on developing health-related skills. Content topics additionally have been updated based on information on trends from the district, from the county, and from regional information sources. Additionally, we are very appreciative of the time, commitment, and insight from the Human Growth and Development Community Advisory Committee. The committee reviewed the current curriculum and standards related to the topic, and their recommendations to provide a comprehensive the recommendation was to provide a comprehensive curriculum based on the national standards and informed by local needs with the curricular updates to those respective units. So I'm happy to answer any questions about the updates.
I just have one question. It says that the health and wellness, talking about the comparison between introduction to health and wellness available at all middle schools and the exploration, health and wellness is offered at East Preble and Southwest High School, while West High School will offer trends in health and wellness. Can you explain to me why West is doing one different than the other three high schools?
Sure, and it's IB requirements related to their continuum of learning. In 10th grade, their continuum is PE and health, so their health has to be in 10th grade, a different course than a lot of the Franklin students take the regular health and wellness in 8th grade.
And as a follow-up, this would be all of our 6th grade students at all of our schools.
Yes, that's correct.
Any other questions? Okay, moving on.
Good evening. Tonight I'm here to talk about two different content areas. The first is AP Chemistry and Principles of Chemistry dual credit. The recommendations that we're bringing forward tonight stemmed from concerns from teachers who were concerned about outdated resources. So we worked with the two teachers for these two courses, and ultimately one of our goals is to try to combine AP and dual credit courses that offers more flexibility for students when they're determining what school they want to go to. Also offers us a little flexibility with staffing. In this particular case, the chemistry courses, we had determined that actually the courses are uniquer than what we expected as we were digging in. So we determined that we'd like to stay with two different resources. So AP Chemistry will continue with the same resource that they currently use, but an updated version of that resource. And then dual credit chemistry would utilize the resource that our partner school UWGB is utilizing and make those updates to the courses.
Any questions? Okay.
Sorry. And then the next one is very similar. Two cases in the social studies content area. As I said, we've been trying to update some of our elective courses because we had focused on our major courses, and now we're trying to update elective courses to bring those resources up to date as well. So in this case, we were able to do some combining of the AP and dual credit courses so that we could utilize that same resource. In most cases, many of the teachers teach both of those courses, and so they are already familiar with the resources and have already been using those resources in their classroom. So they wanted to continue using those instructional materials, but it will be a little bit easier because now they'll have those two courses together and be utilizing the same instructional materials in those courses. Again, this is a small number of teachers who utilize these instructional materials, and all of them were in support of utilizing the ones that are listed here.
Could you just briefly explain, and I'm guessing it's because we're combining the AP and the dual credit, why looking at the other ones, it's 11,000-ish, and macroeconomics is 38,000, is because of the two classes, or is it just kind of where it falls?
It's the number of students in the courses as well. Yeah, so it's the combination of the two courses, the number of students that take those courses. And in the other course, there's only one teacher. And then in this course, I'm not exactly sure, but there's probably 5 or 6 teachers that teach it.
Any other questions on that? Okay.
Hi, I'm talking to the technical and professional writing course, instructional materials and our adoption process. Um, I guess I will start with the intent of the course. We started a journey about last year when NWTC informed us they would no longer be offering the dual credit professional communication course. So we went and searched around, and there were really no really comparable courses that were available in the dual credit format. So what started as kind of a step back actually turned out to be 2 steps forward. I'm really excited because truly the whole point of this course is to engage our senior and junior learners to grow their skills and literacy in a context that aligns with their post-secondary or vocational goals. So, so this not only supports the academic achievers component of our portrait of a graduate, but really we're intentionally addressing the students as personal architects. So put simply, students with the resource that we have selected will have a choice in how they demonstrate mastery of not only their literacy standards through the research, reading, writing, and presenting of technical documentation that aligns with their post-secondary field of interest. And in all of our CTE pathways. So those programs that we have for pathways, the architecture and construction, business, management and administration, finance, et cetera, right? If you're familiar, we have a number of different pathways that our career and technical education pathways offer. And so this will be sort of the main focus of the course, but we will also still include that professional communication, so i.e. Resumes, cover letters, those types of things. Um, the recommended instruction materials are definitely organized for teacher and student success. There's a teacher manual that really does a great job, in addition to the textbook, providing inquiry and discussion activities to prime student interest and background knowledge for each unit. There are pre-made unit slides, which our teachers were really excited about, that really already are pre-made and provide that visual for students, so they're not creating a bunch of new things to get started. The textbook is really based in the best practices of literacy with the gradual release pedagogy. Building up to a final document creation. So the intent is for all students to utilize this final document that they could actually use in a portfolio or in a job interview, or maybe some of their post-secondary work, demonstrating their skills in their chosen pathway in either a vocational or post-secondary setting. So we are really thrilled. I will say that both of the resources that the teachers looked at, and I can tell you it was our CTE coordinator, who was the other facilitator of this collaboration, Adam Treble, brought in his department chairs, his CTE department chairs, CTE teachers. So it was not just ELA teachers, because we really understand in order for an ELA class to really do service to the student inquiry model, that we need to have some other experts in these different pathways to help mentor and support our students as they slowly start to build their skills in developing that technical document that they will, either use in an interview or at least just have practice with. So as we move into the summer, we're going to be looking at about 2 days probably to develop some of the more specific curricular supports that really truly align with those our CTE pathways, so that we will be using our CTE teachers quite a bit. They're going to help us develop those curricular supports, so that students already have exemplars in each of those career pathways to support not only teachers, but students in building their literacy and their knowledge of the technical reading and writing in a field that they are looking to be in. So we're really excited. We're really confident. We have a great resource. Um, we really look to sort of in the future build it up, where we are bringing in community partners as speakers. Community partners, sometimes, that we have had opportunities where community partners will provide students the opportunity to go present in a real life setting. So those are things, this first year we're really looking to, just get those curricular components well versed, and then really move out so that students are applying their knowledge and presenting in some real world opportunities. So we're very excited. Thank you very much.
Do we anticipate is this offered at all of our high schools?
Absolutely it is. Yep.
Any other questions? This is it. James?
I just want to make sure that everyone understands that because we don't have any questions is not because we are disengaged. The pre-read materials were excellently put together. And Vicky reminded me of previous runs through this and providing the background, the context, the evidence, really helped us come to the board table with all of our questions answered. And so I really appreciate the work.
Oh, Lynn?
A general question. First of all, yes, I did read every bit of it and it was very helpful and thank you. Just about the budget, for each one of these, you give a figure of what it's going to cost. May I assume that that was in the budget and you are within the budget in all of this?
Yes.
I need to specify in mind that this was not in our current budget, but it'll be in our budget request for next fiscal year.
All right. Thank you. Rachel, come on up. Next up, we'll be talking about our Head Start grants extension approval.
That the one? Perfect. Good evening and thank you for your time tonight. Head Start has been a proud part of Green Bay Area Public Schools since 1967. And tonight I'm here before you to request the ability to apply for another 5-year grant cycle in Head Start. This grant will allow us to continue to provide high quality early learning to all of our students while focusing on 3 key goals that we have outlined. Our goals involve improving student health outcomes, drastically reducing chronic absenteeism, and strengthening family engagement. You'll also see outlined our yearly school readiness goals within the grant to support student academics. To support your review, I've included the full grant packet that we are submitting to the Office of Head Start, as well as a 1-page document outlining the key components of the grant. Your support is crucial to us moving forward in this work, and we appreciate your consideration going forward.
Any questions? Lynn?
I don't really have a question, but I want to just make a statement. I want to make sure that all the board members know that by accepting these federal funds from Health and Human Services, right, Rachel? Not Department of Education. We are, because the school district owns this program, we are required to meet, they are required to meet with us and report to us every single month. And I'm your representative to the Head Start program. And so I do meet with Rachel and Patty every month. We alternate between the 2 schools. So I get a chance to actually see the kids in the class. I get to see things like, I don't know if you're aware of this, I wasn't. Every single child is escorted to the bus, 1 child, 1 adult, and escorted from the bus, 1 child, 1 adult. And I've stood there and watched them come one by one and stand in line and hold on to their little rope and make sure that they're safe. And so just so you know, every single month they are reporting to me on behalf of the board their attendance, the number of lunches they served, the number of kids who've had their vision tested or their hearing tested, their lead levels tested. And they're doing, in my opinion, they're doing a wonderful job. It's a real privilege to serve as your representative to this program.
Thank you. And I can say the exact same thing. Lynn, it's always fun to see how excited you are with this part of it coming up, and we definitely have the right board member in that spot. So thank you for your service on that. James?
So Lynn, I have a question for you, but first I want to say that having read the grant application, it's not a small amount of work. But a big component of that is an action plan. And in those monthly meetings, do you go through kind of what you're looking at and progress towards those action plans as on a monthly basis? Or is that just kind of what you're hearing about number of meals, number of vision assessments, et cetera? So do you understand the question? Yeah.
When Lynn joins us, we are able to go through a host of different things. One of the things that Lynn was able to join us for this year was our self-assessment, which you received last month, where we looked at how we were doing toward our goals. And that is what helped to shape our goals going forward. So these really came out of our self-assessment as areas of need. And Lynn sat at the table with us and she helped have that communication with our team. And she was really an integral part of that. And it was great having her there. So thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thanks, Brian. I think I'm going to turn it over to Rick for operations.
Thank you. There are 8 agenda items under operations. So we'll start with the budget update.
Angie's going to join me in this part of the agenda. And Kinsey's going to present a slide deck for us. It's this time of year that we are able to have a better forecast of what the next school year will look like for us financially. And the purpose of this presentation is to share with the board and the public what we are forecasting. Oh, thank you. And use this time to discuss some planning. We are projecting at this time somewhere between 10 and $12 million in deficit for the 25-26 school year. And what we want to use this time for tonight is to provide some background on public school funding, how we got to this place, recognizing that the majority, if not all of the people in this room know that we aren't the only school district facing this. And then we want to talk about our proposed plan for consideration to address this deficit. So Angie, you ready? I'll click for you.
Good evening, everybody. So a little bit of background. So one of the major factors that that go into school funding are revenue controls or revenue limits, as we've talked about before. But really what they are is back in 1993, the state put a cap on how much schools could spend per pupil with a combination of state aid and property taxes. Prior to revenue controls or revenue limits that were put into place, the school boards were able to assess property taxes for what the needs were, and the state was, gave us the aid. So once we had the aid, then the school boards, what we needed, the school boards could tax as much as the school needed. But once these caps were put into place, that went out the window. So conservative spending school districts at the time, like Green Bay was, we were locked into the lowest revenue spending per pupil. So we were locked at that low revenue ceiling is what we call it and what you'll hear. So back then, so basically what these revenue controls did for school districts is, right, over 30 years ago, we are now locked into spending for what we spent 30 years ago, right, with limited amount of increases. We did see a slight increase last year, but or the last biennium budget, but we'll talk a little bit about that coming up. So inflation, of course, that's a word that we are all familiar with, especially as of late since the pandemic. But back in, so prior to 2009, we actually received, school districts would receive an inflationary increase. So whatever the CPI was, the per pupil would be increased along with that for school districts. But then in 2009, that was stopped due to the Great Recession. And ever since then, school districts never got caught up, right? We've never received the funding to make up for the stop in that inflationary increase. So if you recall, during the pandemic, all districts received $0 per pupil. So we didn't receive any funding from the state during a period of where inflation, right, was skyrocketed, and we were in the pandemic. So we didn't receive any funding. So at that time, that was when we were using ESSER funding to kind of close that gap. But coming back to the inflationary, as you can see on this graph, so what this graph is showing is that blue line represents the actual combined adjustment in the revenue limit and aids that we received from 2008-9. So it goes all the way to 2008-9. But what's important to note is that gray line is really the trend as to what we would have received had we kept up with that inflationary increase from year to year from the state. So there's quite a gap there. So basically what we're saying is in that 21-23 school year where we received zero funding from the state, we lost approximately $14 million over the course of that 2 years. And of course, if you would project this out, I mean, we're talking $40 to $50 million, right? Which is a pretty staggering number considering what we're looking at for deficits in the future. So that's why it's super important just to recognize that we are not getting those inflationary increases, from the state. So referendum. Oh, sorry, Brian, yes.
Right, thank you. So I just want you to clarify that had this kept up with the rate of inflation, we would be at $14 million? Yes, just for that period of time. And our deficit's about, we're going to get to that, but that's 10 to 12 million is what our deficit is. And had it stayed with the rate of inflation, we'd have 14 million. Okay.
So to cope with the disparities, right, with the no inflationary increase, the lack of funding from the state into public schools, this is one of the things that school districts can use to raise more money above that revenue limit, and that is our capital and our operational referendums. So if you recall, back in 2016-17, Green Bay passed a 10-year non-recurring operating referendum in the amount of $16.5 million to help fund our operations. And this operational referendum ends in 26-27. The amount of state funding that comes with this next state biennial budget, along with what our ability to reduce costs, will determine how much taxing authority the district will need to request in 26-27. So the big unknown is that we don't know what the next state budget is going to be, and we're unsure as to when it's actually going to get settled. So once we find out what we're getting in revenues from the state, right, which is not already built in, that will definitely have an effect on how much, that will help us figure out how much we're going to need to go back to the community to ask for that operational referendum. So back in, or prior to the 23-25 state biennial budget, we were facing a $36 million budget deficit. So the question has come, of course, from many is how did we get to 12 million, right? How did we get to where we are today? So prior to that 23-25, if you recall, we did receive additional funding from the state. In fact, significantly higher than what we had proposed and what we had projected in our original projection. So with that additional revenue that came from the state over these last couple of years, that dropped us down quite a bit. I mean, we were facing like maybe a $20 million at this time. And then once the state funding came, we were able to like close that gap. It was around $2 to $3 million. So over the course of the 23-25 school year, with the additional funding from the state and with our ESSER funding, that's how we've been able to close that gap, especially this year in 24-25. We were facing a $6 to $7 million deficit, but was strategically planning on how we were going to use those ESSER funds, covering summer school in the summer, prepaying contracts, contracted services, our curriculum, right? Prepaying our curriculum. We were able to kind of, I call it, swap those funds with allowable expenditures and then cover some of those operational expenditures for 24-25. So we were able to close that gap by strategically using what remained of those ESSER dollars to come to a balanced budget for this year. So that's kind of how we got to where we are today. So when we look at revenue limits per student, which we just talked about, Green Bay sits at that 11,325. And what this graphic really is representing is that even with the increases of the low revenue ceiling that we received this past biennial budget, we still sit lower than a lot of the districts that are our same size. So, so it's just a graphic as to what some of the bigger school districts are receiving per pupil, and we are still locked into that lowest level of spending. So talk about special ed. So this is of course a mandate, to support our students in special ed. And we have about a $58 million budget. And what gets reimbursed from the state is about 32%. So what that means is that we have to transfer from Fund 10, and I shouldn't say have to, but it is mandated, right? We transfer those funds into Fund 27 to support that programming in the tune of about 33. This year we have budgeted $35 million to be transferred over. So one of the big asks for this upcoming biennium budget is to increase that percentage that we're being reimbursed for special ed, so we can put some of that money back into, right, our Fund 10 and our operating funds, so we don't have to transfer as much over to Fund 27 to support the needs of our students. So again, that's been a big topic throughout the state, as to increasing the ask is to increase that reimbursement for special education, so we can fund what we're doing in Fund 10 as well. Brian? Oh, sorry, Rick.
Go ahead, Brian.
Thanks, Rick. So looking at this and the bar graph that shows the private school vouchers reimbursement on there, when they look at the reimbursement rate, that's 90% of whatever their total special education costs are. Am I correct on that? Or is it per student? What I'm getting at is it's not necessarily what their disability is or their true cost for their expenses. So if you have a student that, is under the special education, receiving services for an IEP, there's lots of different areas on there. And some students are more expensive to educate than other students just by needs and staffing with it. So if you're receiving a voucher for that 90% isn't necessarily 90% of their true cost. That's 90% of, I don't want to say a vague number, but it's not necessarily their true cost on it, because there's some students that they could be choosing not to accept that are more expensive. That's correct? Okay, so one student with an IEP does not cost the same as another student with an IEP. And if you have a voucher school and you're choosing to service a student with an IEP that's less expensive, you're still getting reimbursed at 90%, which is not what we get, of a larger number that may not even be the true expense of educating that student. Okay.
So this is a graph that should look familiar, since we just passed a capital referendum in November. So the school district has strategically structured its debt to allow debt to fall off. And then we repay it, and then we go out and ask the community to support support our facilities needs through a capital referendum. And what we have always strategically done is we tried to maintain or keep that mill rate as stable as possible. So you can see a natural decline in our mill rate over the past several years. We are at our lowest that we have been in decades, the lowest mill rate. But yes, so that has always been our strategy, is to address those capital needs, but also be fiscally responsible about doing it, and to eliminate the surprise factor to our, to our taxpayers as much as we possibly can, because this is one of the levies that we are able to control and that isn't mandated by or the unknowns from what the state is giving us for funding.
Okay, so since 2022, we've been facing some pretty serious budget deficits that we've been systematically addressing. About 2 years ago, we convened some retreats with key members of our community, our staff, to at what are some areas that we could be making cuts in to help. At that time, we were looking at the $36 million deficit. Through those retreats, as well as the facilities master plan, we were able to consolidate schools. The board made some very difficult decisions on that. Reduce software cuts, canceled vendor contracts. We had a reduction in force through attrition and through retirement, a substantial reduction in FTE. Adhering to the board's class size policy. Those of you that have been around a while, we eliminated early release. There were a variety of reasons for that, but there was a financial impact. And began to implement methodologies for different work groups. In my head, I keep saying we are in a pickle, but this is more serious than that. The word escapes me to address the situation we've been put in by the way schools are funded in the state of Wisconsin. There's a very high likelihood that we are going to enter the next school year without a budget. July 1 begins the 25-26 school year, and it is very likely that the state will not pass a budget by that time. So we have to make decisions based on the assumptions that things will remain the same. The last budget that came through included, for example, an additional $325 per pupil. We're assuming that's going to be there. And by assuming that's going to be there and that the state is going to pass a budget that is at least equal to what we have today, we are facing a $10 to $12 million deficit. And I'll repeat what I said at the beginning. We are not the only district in the state of Wisconsin, 420 of us, that are facing a deficit. And many of them are depending on referendum to be able to keep their doors open. So I hate to be the one to have to keep coming to the board and say this and saying it to the public. We truly are doing the best we can. And our goal is, when we're reducing our budget, to have the least amount of negative impact on our children. At some point, the state of Wisconsin has to realize we can't keep cutting without hurting our children. Now that's out of my hands. That's Madison. But what I'm asking the board to consider are several items, and our ask tonight is for the board to have a discussion about them. The first few are district decisions we will just implement. For example, reducing department and school building budgets. For the public, a memo that I've been working on through midday and finalizing will soon be uploaded to board docs. It's there right now. It has more detail for you, for the public. We believe we can reach $2.5 million in reducing department and school building budgets. But I want to share with you that's not because we have fluff. We're going to have to shift some things around. So maybe this year or next year, we will pass on some curriculum, maybe push that down the road a little bit. Those are the things we're going to have to look at, but we believe, board, that we can reach 2.5 million for next year. We will continue reducing FTE through attrition and retirement. This makes sense with declining enrollment. So again, our goal is to have the least negative impact on our children. As I shared with the board and the public in the past, we've reduced our administration by 10% over the last few years. We will continue looking for opportunities. A relatively simple one, but it also is less convenient for our employees. We were offering COVID vaccinations on campus. Shifting the COVID vaccines back to the doctor's office or to CVS will save the district approximately $66,000. That's an FTE. If we have to choose between the two, we will move the COVID clinics back to the doctor's office and still encourage our employees to get vaccinated because your attendance means a lot to our kids. The other one that's under district office purview is reviewing the stipends and riders to see if we can make modifications to those offerings. We're estimating we can save about $85,000 in stipends and riders for the next school year. Just a quick note about that. These things enhance our students. It gives them co-curricular opportunities outside of the classroom, and they're really important. So if we ever get a major surplus, these are things that we should be bringing back. Under the board purview, which I would request the discussion tonight, sir. Freeze annual wage increase on riders. We estimate about 70,000 savings. Hold on base wage negotiations for 1 year or until state budget is finalized and this can be reviewed. Base wage CPI right now is 2.95%. So that would save the district $6,100,000. And I want to stress on this one, the second part on the memo, or until state budget is finalized and this can be reviewed. Freeze steps for 1 year or until state budget is finalized and this can be reviewed. $2.2 million. Replace the income protection plan, which is 82.5% of the salary, with a voluntary employee paid short-term disability insurance. This number changes from year to year dependent upon utilization. This year, we're projecting $750,000. And then lastly, reduce or close KG Academy School, which was initially funded through ESSER. And that could be up to $800,000. So again, our request, Mr. Crossan, is that the board discuss, consider, ask questions about, and provide direction on the options listed below. And at this time, I'd like to ask Mike Freeze and David Johns to join us at the table. We will try to respond to any questions that the board has during your discussion. And if there's something we can't answer tonight, we will bring it to the next board meeting for consideration. Thank you.
Okay, James.
Thank you. Vicki, you mentioned that over the course of the last couple of years, there's been a purposeful effort to reduce staffing through attrition and retirement. Is there a number, maybe Mike may have it, of, can we quantify that reduction? I think it is reasonable for the public to understand the magnitude of that reduction.
Yeah, that's a great question. We've been able to reduce our staff by over 300 FTE in the last couple of years. And it makes an impact. It does.
Okay, anyone got any other questions, comments? Lynn?
I'd like to talk about KJ Academy a little bit. We certainly heard the speakers tonight, and I have visited KJ Academy, visited every classroom, met the entire staff, watched the classes, and I've told you this in the past, that I think that it has, it's just a godsend to some students. I understand the problem, I think. It's a fiscal problem. But we received letters from two teachers today. One of them came and spoke to us. The other one sent a letter. And my impression from those communications is that maybe this school could flourish if more people knew about it, if it had a bigger footprint. I don't know if that's true, but I just wondered if it's possible to think about that before. I'd like to save the $800,000, but because there's some real potential here, could we think about really trying to make it grow and flourish before we decide to reduce it or close it?
Andrew.
Thank you. I have comments on all of these, but I would say as far as KJ Academy, I think the point for me is very well taken, that this school is not about the point in time enrollment count. This is a lifesaver for to bridge gaps for families that maybe online education sponsored by the district is the way to go for a while, for a period of time until circumstances change. It's just far too valuable to get rid of, and I would absolutely vote no on closing KJ Academy. If there was some method that could have some savings without curtailing the program, I don't know what that would actually be. I would think about it, but it's just far too important, because these are students that would just probably leave the district, and perhaps find online education somewhere else, and then all we lose is money, but the kids might be okay, or worse, maybe they just drop out of the education system altogether, and that would be the even worse situation for us. Than, money is money. Money's important, but having a kid with no place to go is even worse. And I believe this 800,000 is very well spent. It's great that we had ESSER dollars to start it with, but this is important.
Yes, Lynn.
Andrew reminded me of something about KJ Academy. One of the things I said is, could we have some kind of a publicity campaign or something to make people more aware of it? And now, Andrew, I'm trying to remember what it is you reminded me of that was so important about KJ Academy that I wanted to, oh, I know what it was. It was about the outcomes. Do the students in that school take the same kind of state tests that all the other students in the district do? And how, and is it proving itself to be valuable, to be a good educational institution?
The students at KJ do take all of the state assessments as well as the interim assessments. The state report card for KJ is available for anyone to view like any other school. I would say that as things have shifted in our approach to teaching reading, and as science of reading principles really emphasize the teacher and student present and together in the lesson, there's just some inherent challenges that come when your teacher is on another side of the screen, and when your level of engagement is still very dependent on you choosing to turn your camera on, you choosing to engage in the lesson. And so something that we've recently discovered, again, as approaches have shifted in the teaching of reading, is that presents some unique challenges for our youngest learners who need to learn to read through that screen.
Good.
So is there data? Is there data that I could look at that would show me that how, how well the school is performing in terms of outcomes for students?
That data would be through the report card. You'd be able to see that there.
Andrew.
So you could look at the state report card, right? But in a unique program like that, which kids is that, right? Which students are on that state report card? That's a point in time in our, if we're talking about a certain number right now, probably our highest turnover school, and that's not really a bug, as they say. It's a feature kind of. It's designed to be a school that you can be in for the whole year or part of a year. It's a specialty program, right? So it is certainly possible that the kids have a period of great success during their time online and then go into another school before they take the test, and then their good results on the standardized tests, which are overrepresent dramatically the importance of in this world anyways, but it's all we have. They may be going elsewhere and contributing those good test scores to a different school, and more likely there than at many other places. Is that fair?
It would be correct that given the role of KJ as a school that students often spend some time in as part of enrollment in a different class in a different building, that would be hard to capture. The other thing that's challenging is the overall low number of students participating by grade level doesn't allow us to really look at that data any other way other than just full academic year students. We're talking about single digit numbers of students in the youngest grade levels.
James.
So that last point is what I would really like to have more information on, because I think the picture that was painted by the speakers tonight, I think there might be in that data a different story that's being told, right? Because we've added some grades to the program. But what's interesting, both in what was said tonight and what I'm learning, is when I went over and I reviewed the program with the original principal, and we had the conversation about its mission, the transient nature of the students that have been described tonight was not part of that mission originally. There was an open enrollment, and it was intended to be kind of a standard offering. And so I don't know when and how the role of that program kind of morphed into something where we're catching what Andrew is rightly saying. If we're catching students and keeping them engaged for a period of time, and there isn't this expectation of you enroll in September and you end in June in this program, I'm really interested in seeing the data, because that's kind of hitting me differently. And I don't want to take an action, based on a need where I had come into this and I reviewed this and it's like, when I compare this to other decisions that we had to take that were extraordinarily difficult and impacted families across our district in the consolidation of schools, I had a hard time differentiating the two, right? But if we set this up as a program where there is a unique need and there's a student that we're servicing that is different than a regular program, I would really like to understand that, because right now it's not clear to me anymore.
I think that well, first of all, I want to thank the staff from the KJ Academy and the speakers tonight. I think that hits home when you think in terms of, kids with different personalities, with different needs, and we have to kind of cater and gap that. And I think that's part of the vision and goal of our district. And what's really interesting about this argument is that I think we could be creative in the idea that maybe merging, maybe consolidating with other schools to make this work for KJ Academy, or explore some options to make it work. Because it really touched me when the mom talked about her daughter not being able to fit in your traditional setting of a school, and that this really is a life-changing opportunity for her child. Now that it's important, and I think it's our job to explore the options available out there to make sure that we exhaust every opportunity to keep this academy going before we come to this conclusion. So I would need some time and some more data as well.
Lynn, just to clarify, so when you say publicly get it out there so people know, just so everybody is aware that it is internal students. We are not allowed at KJ Academy online school to bring students in from other school districts. So it would just be pulling from our own schools within.
Go ahead.
Yes, I meant because the letters that we received said other teachers, other Green Bay area public school teachers did not know we exist. Other parents did not know we exist. So I'm talking about just within the district.
No, I have a question, couple questions. So if the assumed state funding becomes a reality, would that eliminate that 10 to $12 million deficit?
It would not eliminate it, but it would definitely drastically decrease it, right? To about probably, I mean, I'm ballparking it because I'm not sure what the funding is going to be. There's a lot out there. So depending on what comes through, it's going to decrease. If we get additional funding from the state, that deficit is going to decrease, but it is not going to decrease it enough to eliminate going out to the public for that operational referendum in 2 years. So the work will have to continue to reduce costs, because once we lose that $16.5 million in 26-20, or after the 26-27 school year, I don't believe we will get enough funding from the state to not have to go back out for operational referendum in the future.
Okay. I guess that's the number that I'd be looking for. So there would be a reduction in the deficit. And then just because I personally know the good work that you do as CFO and the work that the superintendent is doing, but when the average person hears the words referendum and deficit, their immediate conclusion incorrectly is that there is inefficient, irresponsible spending going on. How do you address that in a way that conveys the work that is being done to make sure that there is responsible management of the money in the district?
I mean, that's my job, Rick, right? I'm the one who asks all the hard questions. And sometimes don't make a lot of friends, but good question. So we are constantly, right? I mean, that's our job as a team, right? As leaders in this district, is to make sure that the resources that are there are being used efficiently. We are always looking at ways to make efficiencies so we can use some of this money to support something out in the classroom. So I'm confident to say that if we did find something, we are going to address it as we move forward in that budgeting process. Last year, I think we've talked about it at the board table, we did zero-based budgeting at the department level, which really gave us some more insight as to what all of the departments are asking for, but just ensured that we were all aligning those resources for the goals of the district. And that definitely is what shined through, right? It wasn't, oh my gosh, look at all this wasteful spending in this department or in that department. It really is just a perspective to see where our funds are going. And 80 to 85% of our funds are going to salaries and benefits, right? To teachers, to support staff, and doing the work of the school district. So when we look at that and when we say, right, we're looking at methodologies, what makes sense as to how many, what our student to ratio for, some support staff out there, we are doing that work continuously, right? I mean, these are hard decisions and hard things to come up with when you don't have enough money. And I think we've done a good job to represent what is up here to close those deficits, because deficits, right? That's in a personal budget. You don't go in not having enough money to spend on what is needed for the district.
James.
I just want to make sure that I understand your budget model, because Rick asked a question about additional state funds. Your model assumes the addition of $325 per student. So that is the most likely increase in revenue from the state. The other revenue increases would be potentially an additional bump of low income, low revenue, low spend districts, and then additional categorical aid to special education, right? But you took a conservative approach saying, yes, we'll win in court and the 325 will remain. Okay.
Anyone else? Comments, questions? Mr. Becker.
Thank you. Having had some history with this, I have to say I absolutely respect the role of staff to let us know what is, I guess, what we would call the worst reasonable case projection, right? Which here we're saying 325 is about the worst reasonable, because the state is sitting on a large surplus and eventually politics will be played, but people on both sides will say we're not going to freeze K-12 funding or keep it below inflation when we're sitting on this huge pile of money. Realistically, it'll be better, almost for sure, and it could be much better, but it probably won't. So there is a range there, and it's the staff's job to prepare us for the worst possible situation. That being said, the sky has not fallen since I've been here. Maybe once it. No, actually, it was during the 2 years that I was off the board that the sky fell, and then that's true. That's what happened. I left in 2010. I came back in 2012. During my years on the board, the sky has not fallen, right? And so realistically, the chances that we'll be on this huge list of is very low. My viewpoint would be that I think it's unfortunate when politics are played with the budget, but I don't really support doing any of these things. I don't like short-term disability not being a benefit anymore, not being a guaranteed benefit. I think it's okay if we have to maybe charge more for it, but I think these things tend to sort themselves out, and I certainly wouldn't want to do anything quickly and then have to, backpedal if the state does better, because it will probably be somewhat better with this much of a surplus there. People have to make deals and compromises that both sides aren't thrilled about, but I think it will more than this minimum worst case scenario will end up coming to us, although it is absolutely correct to prepare us for the worst case scenario. So I do appreciate hearing it. And I hope that with given a little bit of time, we'll find out where we are. And also I would say that as the person who made the motion to have the have the 16.5 million for 10 years, which passed by a large margin. It wasn't just numbers pulled out of the air, but it was numbers that worked out very well for us. I think it was very important, as some districts found out the hard way. It's a kind of a weird concept to do a recurring referendum for operating expenses, because then you introduce the word forever into the equation, and forever is a long, long time. It was 10 years, and the reason that I made the motion for 16.5, I believe it took us to 99% of average per pupil spending, or something that was just a tiny hair under that. And then the community responded by saying, yes, that's a fair request, and we are going to do that to make sure that for 10 years, it just get us back up to the middle, back up to the average. And I think that will happen, and it needs to happen. Otherwise, it'll be pretty catastrophic here. But that's my point, is that I'm not in a hurry to do any of these things, because the never fallen, and the surplus has never or almost never been this big. So it won't all come to education, but a lot of it will.
Okay, any other questions, comments on this topic? James?
I understand where you're coming from, Andrew. I don't think I accept the fact that things just work themselves out. I'd like to make sure that we continue to observe that we are 347 FTE lighter today than we were a couple of years ago. You personally helped bridge a budget gap by motioning a $16.7 million referendum, because we couldn't do it based on state funds and property tax revenues. So I appreciate the district not just preparing us for worst case scenarios. I think they have shown a fiscal conservative approach that has allowed us, through work and diligence, to avoid catastrophic consequences. And things just don't work themselves out. It's been a problem that's been worked over and over again. And if we didn't have the ESSER dollars, I just think that we would have been having this conversation 3 years ago.
Mr. Mills?
I just want to let the board and anyone in the audience know the reason I removed myself from this conversation. Anytime these issues come up, my wife works for the district, so I wanted to make sure that I wasn't involved in all on that conversation. So thank you.
Ms. Gerlach?
You folks who know more about finance and budgeting than I do, which would be everybody, of those 5 bullet points, are there any that staff and board members could say, okay, I agree with James, we can't just cross our fingers and say, oh, it's probably gonna be okay. We gotta do something. Is there one of those bullet points or 2 of those bullet points that people can people who understand this better than I do, can say, yes, we could probably commit to this. This would be a smart thing to do. Anybody?
Well, I go back to the strategic plan and making sure that we are planning for contingencies. This is a what-if drill, is the way we used to call it in the military. What if this condition shows itself? What do we do? And I do agree that this represents the worst case scenario, right? So let's also war game the next to the worst case scenario, and put those assumptions out so that we are all talking off of the same sheet of music. Because yeah, this evokes obviously a panic attack from everybody to say, oh my goodness, that's one option that could happen and I look at a 4-quadrant set of contingencies that could happen, from we get the money that we want to we get no money on the 4th quadrant. And then there should be actions that should align with each one of those 4 quadrants. That to me is the contingency planning work that I would expect the district staff to do. So I would just keep this in the context of this is the worst case scenario. But I also want to see the other three quadrants of actions that the staff will take if those show themselves. Yes, sir.
If we do that modeling exercise, I would like another scenario because this is making the assumption that we do get 325. So the worst case scenario looks worse than this. And so if we're going to do that exercise, we don't start here and build up. I think we step back and say, okay, if we fail, and I know it's in the court system, whether or not that 325 will be perpetual, and if they are able to reduce that, I do think there's another reality.
Mr. Becker.
Okay, well then, where do we stop? There's a, I mean, it is physically possible that it could be zero. It's physically, but it's not against the law that the legislature could say, oh, let's do minus 320. I mean, and I think zero is ridiculous in a surplus situation. Minus, and this is hyperbole to make a point, but how far down the tails do you go with these scenarios? I mean, are we planning for there is probably at least a 95% chance that we're getting 325, or you'd probably be preparing us for something worse. I'm not asking for an exact number, but we don't want to spend a lot of time on the 0.5% worst case, thing, right? So I want a range of reasonable possibilities, and I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on the scenario where 95% of the budget just goes straight into K-12, because that's not going to happen either. That's too far down the other hill. So I think we need to have some balanced approaches, and if that kind of a confidence interval of reasonableness.
Vicky.
We could tell you right now, if the 325 worst case scenario, if it wasn't there, that would be an additional $6 million to the budget deficit. And our recommendation at that point would probably be taking a look at class sizes and layoffs.
Okay, any other questions on this topic? All right, thank you. We are now going to shift to the second agenda item in operations. Benefit recommendations, 2025-26. And likewise, Mr. Mills has opted to recuse himself from this conversation.
Is there a clicker? Good evening, everyone. My name is Mike Freeze. I work in the Human Resources Department, and I'm joined tonight by our Human Resources Benefits Manager, Jessica Cortez, and our client executive from M3 Insurance Solutions Incorporated, Beck Kurzinski. And we'll be talking to the board, providing the annual update and request for consideration of our recommendations to renew our various insurance plan rates for the following year, as well as any recommended plan changes that we have for you this evening.
All right, so I'd like to start this evening with just an overview of some key strategies and initiatives that we've been working on during the 2024-25 plan year. So a big focus has been employee education. This year we've spent quite a bit of time educating employees on the use and best practices related to their HRA, their health reimbursement arrangement, on preventive exam benefits and the incentive to earn the additional contribution to their plan premiums for completing that preventive exam, member engagement in their overall benefits and ensuring appropriate communication related to those benefits, making sure that folks understand the benefits that are available to them and how they can best utilize them. And then just overall communication related to the diverse plan offerings. The district has a really robust benefits plan offering, and making sure that folks understand the variety of offerings that are available to them. Also this year, we've focused a lot on evaluation of those employee benefit offerings. So both the financial stability of what is currently offered and how that aligns with our recruiting and retention goals.
We have a Benefits Advisory Committee, also known as the BAC. We meet once a month, and it's a whole bunch of different people, different stakeholders within the district that meet, and we go over learnings of the plan, how we can best utilize it. We go over the forecasting, the plan utilization, just a wealth of information that we are giving other people within the district to help us then go out in the field to promote the benefits.
So over the next several slides, I'll talk through a variety of different data points on the health plan for the prior couple of plan years as well as the current year to date. So we'll start with enrollment. What you see on the screen in front of you is the enrollment broken down by active employees on the plan and retirees on the plan. And for this data, we are looking at contracts. So that's total employees or retirees on the plan, not members. And when I say members, I mean total people on the plan. So this is looking just at contracts, employees or retirees. So the first line shows us all plans combined. That's a combination of the total of actives and retirees. And you can see current year to date. So that would be July of 2024 through present. And then the second column is the 23-24 completed plan year, and then 22-23. Over that period, much like the conversation that was just had with regard to the total staffing for the district, we see a decline in the total enrollment in all plans combined. Then the second line in the white, we have active employee plans. Both active employee plans as well as the retiree plans, we see a decline in both of those plans for each of those two previous full plan years, as well as current plan year to date. Then the next slide, we look at utilization. So how is the plan performing? And that percentage utilization is a percentage that's calculated based on the premium that's taken in and the claims and the administrative costs that are paid out. This number ideally would be below 100%. Unfortunately, current year to date, all plans combined, we're performing at 109%. That is due to some high cost claims, and without giving any personal health information, we've got some folks that are dealing with some really tough stuff right now. The majority of those high cost claimants are happening on the active employee plan. You can see the active employee plan currently is performing at 106% loss ratio. Our retiree plan's at 104% loss ratio. I do want to point out the retiree plan has the best loss ratio that we have seen in recent years. And if we go back further, it's the best retiree loss ratio that we've had in several years. We have made plan design changes over the past several years, and we've done a lot of education of our retiree population with regard to alternative options that are available to them, particularly our Medicare specialist as well as our individual health options specialist. So making sure that folks understand the variety of different plan types that are available for them that both save them money and save the district's health plan money. Yes, James.
So I've always wondered when we look at these loss ratios, do you calculate at the plan level our total exposure? I mean, I know that there's a stop loss mechanism after this. Is it calculated at the plan level, or is it just at the participant level?
Are you asking with regard to the specific health plan itself by plan design?
Right. So
Yes.
when you, and what is that? So if it, like seeing 137% exposure or stop loss, not sorry, loss ratio for the retirees, it begs my question of how bad can that get? You know, and when does it stop and we're completely into stop loss insurance?
Yeah, so the stop loss insurance is purchased for the entire group as an aggregate. So
Okay.
all of Green Bay Public Schools has the same stop loss policy. Then when we calculate the loss ratio, it's calculated based on the portion of that stop loss premium that's allocated on a per contract, per month basis to that population.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
It does. Yeah, thank
Okay.
you.
All right, so now this chart I know is a little bit more difficult to see, but what I want to focus on this chart, the top information is what you saw in the last two slides, and that's why I broke it out in those two separate slides. The bottom left corner is really what I want to focus on, and that's that total cost per employee per year, PEPY, and the public sector benchmark. So total cost per employee per year for Green Bay schools in the current plan year, July 2024 through December 2024, come in at 17,000, it's really tiny, $17,825 compared to the public sector benchmark of $20,779. So when the question was asked earlier during the budget presentation about, as you're looking through things, do you see, some wasteful spending or overages in places? Your plan is really efficient. So part of the challenge that we face when we see those loss ratios that are over 100%, we simply have our premiums set low. If our premiums were higher, our loss ratio would be better.
Right.
If our premiums were higher, our total cost per employee per year would be higher, and we'd be closer to that benchmark, the comparable costs that other public entities are spending on their benefits. That begs, puts us in that situation where if there were more funding, we wouldn't have that rough look and loss.
Sorry. So then that's where when we talk at the beginning about we have a benefits advisory committee and we each month take a look at how the plans are performing. We take a look at the services that our members are utilizing. And then around mid-year, when we start doing the modeling and understanding how things are projecting out, we prepare to come to you. This is the latest month we can come to the board to ask for approval in order to ensure that we can set up the system for employee open enrollment, which will take place in May, so that we can then activate the insurance plans starting again on July 1st. So in summary, the renewal recommendations, based on some of the numbers that Beck was just sharing, we will share with you some of the proposed changes in premium numbers, as well as in a few spots where there's some plan design changes for some folks that are recommended. But in the medical plan, which is administered by UMR, we recommend maintaining our network and service coverage. We recommend maintaining our specific partnerships with Bellin and Prevea for our low and no cost services that are deemed very high value by our members. Maintaining the fully covered preventative care services that we've had great success with in previous plan years. Maintaining offering a qualified high deductible health plan design. My understanding is we are obligated under the Affordable Care Act to offer, meet some minimum requirements. Can you just clarify briefly, Beck, what if the ACA requires it for, and we have that offered and met through the high deductible plan, correct?
Yep, so you have an obligation to offer an affordable health plan for all of your employees that work 30 or more hours per week. So our high deductible health plan has a premium that's low enough so that it is affordable for even your lowest paid employee who works 30 hours or more per week.
Thank you. Do you have a question? Oh, your microphone. So you have the permanent microphone tonight, the power microphone tonight. Yes. And then last comment before we get into how do we come up with some of our recommendations when looking at what we are offering as an employer in comparison to some of our neighbors and in the area. We do have recommendations that include making some plan design changes for the that is commonly referred to as the $1,500 deductible copay plan. That does not include changing the deductible, but it includes recommending some changes to portions of the plan design itself. So Beck, would you be able to talk a little bit about some of the benchmarking that was done?
All right, so as we walk through this comparative benchmarking, I want to just do a little bit of a level set. So the benchmarking that we use is a comparative benchmarking. So we're comparing ourselves not to like what is expected as the level to be attained, but more of an average. So here we're using 74 mid-market health plans. And to define mid-market for you, that's a group-rated, fully insured plan or a self-funded plan. So it's not a small group where they're individually rated. And it's school districts and local government entities that are in Northeast Wisconsin. And these are current as of 1/1 effective dates. So it's as recent as January 1st renewal groups. So Mike, if you'll go to the next slide. All right, so the school district has that $1,500 single deductible, a $3,000 family deductible. 2/3 of that deductible is reimbursed by the district's health reimbursement arrangement if the members file for those reimbursements. So that brings the deductible down to a $500 deductible on the single plan, a $1,000 deductible on the family plan. That's well below the benchmark. Our benchmark average is about $2,700 on the single, $5,500 on the family. You have an amazingly low deductible. So good news there. Go ahead, James.
What was the design thought or the thought behind designing it such that the HRA only reimburses deductible and removing the flexibility for someone to potentially pay for copays with the HRA as well? I was just trying to determine if that goes into your rating or your underwriting. Is that the reason why?
That's exactly why. Yep. It's an underwriting for the the cost of the plan. Yeah. The coinsurance is a place where we have a slightly lesser benefit with 80% coinsurance proposed. The piece that I want to note here is that because our deductible is so low and because our maximum out of pocket is so low, the benchmark average for our book of business is artificially high because we have many employers that have a higher deductible and a higher maximum out of pocket, but they have 100% insurance. So for example, many employers have, let's say, a $4,000 single deductible, and then they have a $4,000 maximum out of pocket, but 100% coinsurance. So I'd encourage you to not be as concerned with 80% coinsurance being of lesser benefit when we look at all of the other elements where the district's proposed plan is better than benchmark. So max out of pocket, the proposed benefit is a $4,000 single maximum out of pocket, $8,000 family, increasing $1,000 on the single, $2,000 on the family. Remember that the HRA reimburses $1,000 of that single and $2,000 of the family. So this is below the benchmark, that average amount. The average is about $4,100 on the max out of pocket single and about $83 on the family. From a copay standpoint, one thing that I want to remind us of when we're looking at those office visit and urgent care copays, we do have those partnerships with Bellin Health or Amplify and Prevea Partnered Health or the Prevea Health System that allow our members those low or no cost options for accessing care. So where we see, the $40 office visit or the $75 urgent care, we do have other options for members to access those care. And then the specialty copays and emergency room copays are slightly above the benchmark there. And with the idea that we want to steer folks into the office visits for primary care and urgent care where possible. Your plan design also does waive the emergency room copay when a member is admitted. So if they're admitted from the emergency room, they don't pay that $300 copay. And then moving on to prescription copays, the prescription copays are slightly above the benchmark, but we like to remind that members never pay more for the cost of their meds than what the meds cost at that tier. So you may have a tier 1 medication that could cost up to $20. But if your medication at a tier 1 med costs only $4, let's say, then you will only pay $4. So the tiers are the maximum that you will pay for a medication in that particular area. Also for tier 4 medications, we have 30% co-insurance, but members who sign up for RX access those medications at $0 because of the patient assistance programs that are in use. And all of the Green Bay Public School District members who are eligible for Prudent RX are signed up for Prudent RX. So we have no one who's paying the 30% co-insurance. Any questions about the benchmarking comparables that I've shared? So when we look at continuing increased costs of benefits, and knowing that our premiums are lower and our average costs to maintain the plan are lower than what the average public employer is paying, our options really are to help, contain costs by helping folks find high quality care at efficient costs. But then we also have to look at, some of those plan design changes, or, as an employer, do we have the ability to absorb the costs? Based on the previous conversation, that certainly doesn't seem reasonable. And, working with primarily all public sector employers, I know that that's not reasonable. That's not the state that our employers are in right now. And given our recruiting and retention market, we're not in a position where we want to reduce or eliminate benefit offerings. And so Mike's going to speak to the recommendations.
Right. So in essence, the recommendations for renewing include some changes in the premiums, which we'll talk about here momentarily, as well as some recommendations to change the plan design for the $1,500 single $3,000 family HRA plan. This also coincides with the district taking on an additional estimated $1.2 million in increased obligation that is beyond what we have this year, because of those very first numbers that were shown in terms of the forecasting. So this is a combination of distributing recommended cost increases to the employees as well as to the employer. And this allows us to, we believe, remain, as compared with the benchmarking examples, very competitive with regards to the benefits plan that we offer. It shows there in red, the co-insurance, the max out of pocket, the office visits, the emergency room, and the prescription drug plans. Those are the things that Beck was able to highlight overall. And so the overall renewal recommendation, an increase in medical premiums of 2.78% for folks who are at the $1,500 deductible plan, premium increase of 10.28% on active employees in that higher deductible, which also qualifies for you could secure a private HSA account, and a premium increase of 13.58% for all retiree plans. What does that look like in kind of real dollars for folks? One example would be, and actually I'll give the summary at the very end after I show dental and vision as well. Dental is estimated and recommended to increase at 2.2% premium, continuing with the plan design as offered previously. The vision increase was last changed in 2022. It is projected to go up 5% premium increase, and that would hold through 2028. So when it comes to premiums, if you are on a single plan, your per check increase for your health insurance would be $1.63. Your dental would be 8 cents. Your vision would be 22 cents. So your increased cost to access the plans on a single plan, if you're an educator, it would be $1.93 because you get paid the months that you're being paid, right? If you're a year-round employee, that works out to $1.61 per check in your increased premiums with these recommendations. On the family plan, it's an even $5 for increased across health, dental, vision together for families led by an educator, and $4.17 per check for folks that are year-round employees. So on the premium increases, that's the estimated amounts among the three plans. It's the utilization of the plan where you see the bigger differences. Our life, just as a reminder, a couple of things we're not bringing to you tonight because there are no changes required. Life and disability was approved last spring. That rate holds through the end of June 2027. And we are garnering some savings through the Tyler Enterprise implementation. We will not be utilizing the Workterra online enroll for open enrollment. That'll remove $122,000 plus this year. And in summary, we remain committed to seeking input from members, collecting data, making data-informed recommendations, working on member education, exploring wellness incentives and preventative measures that will help our staff stay healthy and well, and continuing to find creative and unique ways to stay competitive in this market relative to our benefits offerings. Thank you.
Okay, anybody got any questions, comments? Andrew?
Thank you. So this sounds not so bad on the surface. It's $5 per check, but all of it's in the plan design, and I don't how am I gonna say it? To say that going from 90 to 80% when the standard is 94, I'm gonna say I think it's more substantial than perhaps it was presented. I think that's significant, and to know how significant, I guess what I look at is how does it, I need to know how this impacts an average single and an average family. So what is the, what is the total health spend of a average family, so we can see where that would put them, and what's the average spend of a single? Because that not the $5 per check increase, but that difference in out of pocket, is what they're gonna pay.
So just to clarify, you'd like to know more about the average spend?
That would be the starting point, is what's the average spend, so we kind of know what falls in the middle. I think we know, and you did provide how many people cap out right now. It was 12% of one and 8% of the other, so not that many cap out, but more it'll be easier to cap out, because although the cap is higher, you catch it quicker, right? So you'll cap out, a family would reach the cap at about 27, 28,000, where they don't reach the cap until about 33,000, but there's already a pretty big difference by then in what you're spending out of pocket. So, yeah, I need to, what is the average, what does an average single and an average family spend, so we can talk about, okay, therefore, what are the out-of-pockets gonna look like under the new system?
Yes, we can work on that, sure.
Is that not like one of the most basic automatic stats that would, one of the most key stats of our plan is what the average is?
I think the piece that makes it challenging, Andrew, is once folks have met their maximum out of pocket, then those costs are paid for by the plan. So I can, like Mike shared the the percentage of members or number of members. I don't recall how he shared it with you, but the number of folks who have met their maximum out of pocket.
That's fair. So maybe the median spend is more of the thing, right? That probably, and in fact, that probably is, right? So that's my mistake. I should have asked for the median, because yes, the average, you could have a very high, and it would distort what happens out of pocket. But that median, I think it makes a difference whether that median for a family is, 20,000, that tells us one story. And if the median for a family is, 10 or 11, that tells us a different story. But it's a big story, and that's why I've always supported limiting what we do to plan design as much as possible. in a world where we used to have a calculation of the total financial package and now you can't anymore. What I need to know if I'm going to vote yes on this is that are people losing, are we going to give, are we going to have net negative money? Like how many people are going to have their difference in out of pocket potentially cost more even after we do the CPI, which I think in the end we will be able to do. So that's, it's, to me, it seems like a lot, and I think it's, yeah, it's a lot. I also don't know if we're actually coming in lower than private sector plans. That's, on the one hand, that's good. On the other hand, salaries, we had generations of a trade-off of a lower salary for better, richer benefits. And so I think, unless we've caught up to the private sector in terms of the salaries, then we should be offering a richer benefit. I don't think we're there yet. Lines might have gotten more blurred, but for me, it's about not seeing people worse off unless the sky falls. And if the sky falls, I guess we have to revisit. But I wouldn't be able to vote for this as it is right now with this large plan design change. But I do look forward to finding out what that median, not average, is, and we'll take a look from there.
Any other questions, comments? Yes.
In the memo, the district is picking up 1.2 million, which is adding to the deficit. If the district were to pick up the entirety of the increases, I thought I saw a number somewhere and I might be off. It would add 5 million, 4 million?
At last projection, it was over 4 million. If we only applied this through a benefit change, I'm sorry, a premium change. And the premium calculations would be different than what we brought to you tonight. So the premiums it would be more expensive premiums. So the per check takeout that I shared would not be accurate. We would have to update that. And the district responsibility portion would also increase and estimated up to 4 million plus.
One more thing. So we had a worse year than expected. We had those, was it 108, 109, 109. But part of insurance and part of self-funded insurance and part of why you don't give up the control to a huge corporation if you're big enough to keep your own control is that you should be able to ride the waves, right? So I guess my question is, I wouldn't be advocating for, ooh, hey, let's lower deductibles because we were 97 this year. If we were 97 instead of 107, 108, is 108 too far outside of the expected bumps in the road, or are we just not yet at a point where we can handle those bumps in the road? There's some different funds to help balance that, aren't there? Financial funds? Okay, but isn't I guess that's my bigger question. I'll stay high level. Is it just that 108 is a bigger bump than a system can handle? Because you're not gonna have every year 100, 100, 100, 100. That would be great if you did, but yeah.
Our concern, Andrew, would be that your plan is underfunded. So the last several years being over 100% loss ratio, there's simply not enough funds being allocated on an annual basis to the health plan. And so while the district has some funds in reserve, we're going to continue to come to you and say, we're over budget, we're over budget, we're over budget, if we don't allocate more funds into the health plan, or if we don't reduce costs in the plan.
Okay, because we never had the 96 or the 97 to go along with the 108 or the 104, or almost never had it.
We had it on the active plan before COVID, but that was at the same time that our retirees were so far over 100 that the plan as a whole, and I don't know if you've got it off the top of your head, but it's been a long time since the district plan was under 100.
Okay, anything else on this topic? All right, thank you. All right, the next agenda item will be job description updates.
Tonight, sorry. Once again, Mike Freeze, Human Resource Department tonight, joined by Director Julie Seefeld of the Multilingual Bilingual Learners Department. Julie has one job description that she's asking for consideration. Julie, would you mind providing a little summary of what we're dealing with tonight?
I'm very excited to bring this job description to you tonight because it is in direct support of bilingual teachers, which is, they are the direct service to our children. So the position is a vacant position, so it's budget neutral. We had a resignation, and in looking at our data of the number of bilingual teachers who are on a license with stipulation, we have approximately 20 of those teachers of our 85 bilingual teachers. So these are candidates who come to us with a bachelor's degree, and as less and less candidates are going into teachers, our recruiting efforts are getting out there. Where we are finding people who want to work in education, they just don't have the degree. So they obtain a job and go back to school to be a teacher while they are teaching. So you can imagine their life is stressed. They are teaching in a classroom without education. They are going to classes at night. So this position will directly support the bilingual teachers who are on a license with stipulation. They will do coaching with that teacher. They will model lessons for that teacher. They will roll their sleeves up, work side by side next to this teacher. And this will ultimately lead to retention, people wanting to stay in our district because of the support. So that is the position that I'm bringing forward tonight. And as I said, I'm very excited.
Okay, any questions? Comments? Okay, thank you. All right. All right, next agenda item is the proposed land exchange with the city of Green Bay.
Yes, I say, where is it?
Thank you. Sorry about that. Yeah, so I won't go through the entire memo, as this has been shared and been discussed quite thoroughly. But overall, we're looking at a land exchange with the city of Green Bay for deeded acres to the district of 10.24 acres and land deeded to the city at 6.85 acres. This also includes the cost to raise MacArthur Elementary after that and include that land in the land exchange. This also would engage us in a 9-month planning option for Tank Elementary and Elmore Elementary with the city to solicit developers to develop those two properties. There's a few other details provided in the memo along with that, but that pretty much summarizes the proposal.
Mr. Becker.
Thank you. I'll keep it brief, but this will determine how I vote next week. I appreciate that the city will encourage affordable housing when finding a developer for Elmore and Tank Elementary, but it will not be a requirement. I've been around the block a few times, and if you don't put it in writing, if you don't put it in the motion, it didn't happen. I believe the city intends to have affordable housing near the top of their list, but to me, we are in a unique opportunity if we have to close the schools to decide what's going to happen to them. So I think I would like to see us exercise more control over what would happen there. I'm not necessarily saying that affordable housing is the only thing, but I strongly lean that way because that's what we really need. Could there be some type of community facility? Could there be some type of childcare? Maybe, but for me saying, hey, we signed this planning agreement, we had a head nod and a general understanding that we're gonna try to get affordable housing in there, it's not strong enough for me, and it's too important for me to leave to chance. So that's me.
James.
I recognize that is important, but if I recall, when we were kind of establishing these 8 criteria, that it's not simply signing a planning and agreement and then the district disengaging from the process, that to your point, there might be community center opportunities or what have you. So number 8 was to give us, the district and the city, collaborating to find the developer an opportunity to actually, action a plan that may not be affordable housing, but may also check boxes for you as it pertains to the right thing for that property for the city. So I thought we'd kind of work through this, that there will be opportunities for us in actually accepting the bid package from the developer that we work with to enforce, yes, this is appropriate, no, this is not appropriate. So I really have a hard time, kind of, limiting our latitude early in the process by striking, but it will not be a requirement.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, the next agenda item is contracts under Wisconsin statute, section 118.22.
Kayla, you could probably just stay here. This is the annual presentation of teacher contracts. That's a requirement by the state.
Any questions, comments? Nope. All right, we will move on to the next agenda item. Edison Middle School roof replacement. Who's talking now? Yeah.
We had solicited bids, publicly posting this, received 3 qualifying bids and are recommending we award the low bidder. And
Sorry.
I'll jump ahead a little bit too. This will be the same comment for the next 3 items.
That's exactly what I was going to ask you. Okay. Any questions, comments on any of the 3 roof replacement agenda items? Okay, thank you. And that concludes the operations portion of this. I yield the floor.
Thanks, Rick. I'll pass the chair to Andrew to guide us through policy and governance.
Okay, thank you. We have 6 items. We'll start with the 2 of them that go together. 341.1 policy and rule for reading instruction.
Good evening. You have received a memo regarding the revision considerations for policy 341.1, exhibit 341.1, and policy 342.3. For the reasons noted in that memo, we are proposing the changes in front of you tonight.
Any questions on 341.1 policy or rule? Okay, thank you. Then so that covers A and B. We'll move on to C. Revisions to Board of Education Policy 342.3, programs for gifted and talented students.
My comment applied to that as well. It's summarized in the same memo.
Any questions? All right. Thank you. And then item D, revisions to board policy 345.4, grade promotion, retention, and acceleration.
For this proposed policy change, we are incorporating an Act 20 required promotion policy from 3rd grade to 4th grade as dependent on a student's successful completion of a reading plan. What we're proposing is a consolidated policy for all promotion policies across the multiple grades that we're required to do that, rather than having a different one for each grade level.
All right, any questions? All right, we'll move on. I guess we had a rule with that as well. Any questions on the rule? All right, and then item F, repeal of Board of Education Policy 345.41 would be because the 345.4 expands and includes all the grades.
That's correct.
Okay, that's it. I'll return the chair back to James.
Thank you, Andrew. That means we have come to the end of our agenda. I would receive a motion to adjourn. No?
Closed session.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's not late at all. Lane, would you please read the motion to adjourn the closed session?
I move that the board adjourn into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.85, Section 1C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, to its superintendent's performance evaluation, and Wisconsin Statute 19.85, Section 1E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, more specifically to wit, negotiating with the Village of Alloway and the Village of Bellevue regarding the potential acquisition and divestment of real property and the listing of other real property, and Wisconsin Statute 19.85, Section 1G, conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved, more specifically to wit, potential litigation matters regarding the district.
Second.
Kinsey.
Becker,
Aye.
Lyerly,
Aye.
Mills,
Aye.
Gerlach,
Aye.
Crossan,
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
You have been watching the Green Bay Area Public School District's Board of Education meeting. Please visit the school district's website, www.gbaps.org, for more information on the district and future meeting dates. If you cannot fully access the information on this video, please let us know the accessibility issue you are having by calling 920-448-2025 or by email at communications@gbaps.org. We will try to provide the information to you in an alternative format and/or make the necessary improvements to make the information accessible.